Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube channel where we explore all things cinema. Today's video review is on Husbands, which was released in 1970. This was directed and written by John Cassavetes. John Cassavetes also starred in the film with Ben Gazzarra and Peter Falk, as well as Jenny Runeker. My guest is writer and major John Cassavetes fan, John D. Babcock. This review was actually done in 2021, back when my show was mostly done live. And so at the time, I was doing double bill reviews that either was around a certain theme or a certain genre or a certain director. And when I did Husbands, it was on a double bill with Faces, and focusing, of course, on the work of John Cassavetes. And so now, and for anyone who's been following my channel, you'll notice that I've gone back to some of these live reviews from time to time and re-edited them. And in this case, I'm just focusing on the Husbands part of the review and adding stills to the various moments and scenes that we discuss, and I'll do that for Faces sometime soon as well. So you can also still see the video I'll leave in the description box below, which has both Husbands and Faces. But here's my new review with John D. Babcock of Husbands, and I think the visual reference to the various scenes and moments will be a great benefit to you all to get a better understanding of what we're talking about, as well as to remind you all, for those of you who have seen it, of these various great scenes and moments and performances from the entire cast. So thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the review. So jumping into Husbands now. I have if anyone's listening as a podcast, I'm holding up the DVD. I don't have they just released this on, I'm sure you know, John, on Criterion a year ago. I don't have the Criterion disc, but I have, this one came out in 2009. But this is a great, just a bit of a rundown. It follows, not that even, John's movies are less on plot, more on character. Yeah. But three middle-aged husbands with wives and houses in the New York suburbs who go on a wild spree after a close friend dies of a heart attack. Ending up in London, the three must confront their own mortality and decide how to spend the rest of their lives. That's actually pretty accurate.
Yeah, that is very accurate. And
how do you feel about this one? About Husbands?
Really good. I mean, that was another one when I first saw it. Well, I didn't see that one until I was a husband and also a father. But that also connected really strongly with me. And that whole concept of, you've got a tight group of four friends, or, you and three other friends, and one of them, dies, and you're really not that old. What does that mean, and how do you even process that? And I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't think, because Cassavetes didn't talk too much about his older brother who died in his 30s. When Cassavetes was in his 20s, but his older brother was like 32 or something like that. But I know from a little bit that I've read about that really resonated with Cassavetes. And also was like, okay.
And of course, the funeral scene off the top is in the cemetery where his brother's buried.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that that had an impact, obviously, with him, and realizing, okay, well. This all could end at any time. What do I want to do? And I want to make sure that I'm doing what I want to do.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And so anyway, that subject line and that through as a premise for Husbands, and then and it touches a little bit slightly on the same some of the same areas as Faces, in terms of your middle-aged men and what are you going to. What do you do? Is there more than this? What can we do to keep things going, and they have a little blowout. But it's interesting to me is they go out, they drink at this bar, they get sick, they try to go to work. Ben gets into a fight with his wife and tries to go to work, and then they're like, forget it, we're going to London. They go there, and it never really, I mean, in most films there, I think you'd see a time when all of them would be just living it up at the Kings of London, and they never really, I mean, they do eventually bring girls back to their women that they've met, back to their room, but none of them really again, it's that awkward thing. None of them really have that, hey, we're the Kings of London now, whereas I think a movie in someone else's hands would have them being, living it up and meeting all these women and being, throwing money around, winning money. They go to the casino and they lose money. So it again, that realism, and that is what is going to happen for that. And there's never really a time where they're really, even with the women, it's awkward because they haven't done that in so long, and it's just awkward. But
it's so awkward.
Very awkward, but it's so, again, real and genuine. I mean, I really enjoyed Husbands. The more I watch it now that I've been married for a number of years. And
me too. Yeah. It's funny because I probably have seen Husbands more than I've seen any of his other films. Yeah. For some reason, I always, I mean, there's something about just the three of them together that is so, they're just like made for each other. These guys, like they all kind of look, they have similar looks, and similar temperaments, but also very different, in other ways. Yeah. And I think in this case, in what, these, again, we're talking these long sequences in Faces, in order to really have the audience live with the people, experience it emotionally, get to know them, seeing the ways in which they interact. He goes even further, in my opinion, here, because, I actually timed it when I watched it the other night, the from the beginning until the 50-minute mark is them throwing up in the bar. Like the whole hour, the whole first hour is, right off the bat, the friends die, we're right in, the friend dies, all you see is those pictures of them hanging out at a pool. Again, you don't see a build up. You don't even see the other husband, and boom, we're in the funeral. And, he really found a lot of humor here. He said he framed it as a comedy, particularly just, leaving the funeral and looking at the coffin and the limousines, and Peter Falk saying, I didn't like it. It's just, that's right. People get very formal. People get very formal at funerals. Yeah. This guy wasn't like that. So they start to see the absurd nature of life and death. And I mean, I think really all these guys want to do is hug each other and cry it out and say that they're scared. But again, just like we were saying about, it's common for men to be taught, not to cry, not to be scared, not to show that you're scared, and then really to only be in touch with their anger and to be tough and confident. And this really injures men, and I think John, I can't think of two better films that show that than Faces, exactly, and Husbands, and I think that's all they want to do, but they don't know. So their way is to try to escape all those things, go swimming, play basketball, go get drunk, and that every time that sequence, the drinking game in the bar starts, I gotta take a couple of breaths because it is so cringeworthy, and they are so horrible to that poor woman in the red hat. I mean, why do you think they were so horrible? How did you take that?
In reading about them making that, if I recall correctly, but he tried it several different ways. Cassavetes tried that bar scene several different ways, and he wasn't happy with any of it. So that's why everybody in the bar ended up at one table, and they just started going around singing and Falk's taking off his shirt and all this kind of stuff. And they just kind of shot it as like, okay, well, everybody come around here, let's just try that. I think by and large that sequence there is pretty much improvised, and
there was more. Yeah, exactly. There was, and it's true. Often John's films were scripted. People thought they were all improv. Were scripted. They weren't. But this one, he did say, and I don't know if you heard this, John, but he did say half of it they're improvising on camera. Did you ever hear that? Yeah. I think so.
For this one, and it was, like you said, it was more of, there is a script, but that sense of, as I don't care if you get one word right. As long as we get as long as your character is emoting what you want your character to emote, and all that kind of stuff. So, because he definitely, you're right. People said these are improvised, but no, he wrote them. Yeah, they're written, but they're just.
There's even a novel on Husbands, which he never released. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. True. That's very true. And and going back with Cassavetes, Falk, and Ben Gazzarra, it was always interesting in reading. I think it's in the Carney book, where he pitched that to the studio, who liked it, and they said, "Who are the stars?" Well, it's me, Falk, Ben Gazzarra, and it was like, "Oh, it's never going to work. You have all the same hair color."
Like, you got to put a blonde in there. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, you're insane. Yeah, you have the same hair color. That was the guy's critique.
Yeah, they certainly didn't like, it's funny that he shot this in color, but really it could be a black and white film. I mean, it's really, they're, even the way they're dressed, they're in, suits, white shirt, and those rooms, the bar is black. The bathroom is black and apparently, I don't know if I'm sure you know this, there's an interview on this DVD that I have. I'm sure it's also on the Criterion release, and the director of photography said to John, "These rooms are black. How the hell am I going to shoot this?" And he's like, "I don't know. It's your job." But and I thought the cinematography is beautiful. I mean, because really it doesn't matter that it's behind them is dark, but you focus on the faces even more so, and they're pretty well lit, and that's all John really cared about. I mean, you don't walk out of his films thinking about the cinematography or the the suspense sequences and the editing and because I mean, he certainly had very innovative designs that you just don't feel it as much. It's looser. It feels as if there is no design, but really, particularly when he edited it, there really was, go ahead.
I think his quote about that was, if the performances on camera are good enough, it makes the cinematography look better. Yeah. Because that's when you'll notice it. And it also reminded me, along the same time as I was kind of doing research for the play, I was listening to when Peter Bogdanovich was doing those interviews with Orson Welles for his book.
Oh, the book,
yeah, but on YouTube somewhere is just like 3 hours of Bogdanovich interviewing Orson Welles in Mexico and in California. They just let the tape machine go. Anyway, Bogdanovich brought up to Welles somebody asked Charlie Chaplin. Or somebody said to Charlie Chaplin, why don't you have any interesting camera angles in your films? And Chaplin's response was, well, I don't need interesting camera angles. I'm interesting.
Right.
And so that to me was also the same lines of, Cassavetes films. We're watching interesting people. So you don't need necessarily all these, interesting camera angles because you're watching interesting people. So
and they're so it's a good point, and they're so relationship driven. There's so much about them, and they're it's not people on the run or a suspense film or a thriller or a horror film where you perhaps would need a more technical design to it, special effects or what have you. But here it's all about those people. Interestingly enough, he, as John, he would later go on to play with more, quote unquote, conventional elements, like opening night, he has a ghost, and
right,
even and his scores became a little more prominent. I mean, you can barely there's barely any music in Faces and Husbands, like a little bit there. He certainly, it's interesting because I always think it's important to bring up, because I think often people think he just picked up a camera and shot stuff, but no, I mean, surely there was a looseness and a freedom. But if you watch his films, they're films that are unconventional, but you can see how you can put them in a cutting room and cut them in a very conventional way. And even this film, as I'm sure you know from reading Cassavetes on Cassavetes, he had edited it in a way that Columbia, they were loving it. They thought it was hilarious. Right. And then when he got them to sign, he conned them, right? Well, sign here, just so I get final cut. I got a little, I got a little more work to do. And no problem. Sure enough, he changes the whole thing. And but you really could really take them, because they're not slice of life. They're certainly bring you into life, but they're all heightened realities. I mean, How often do people, their friend dies and they get drunk and they swim in basketball, they go to London, have affairs? That is not slice of life.
No. But it's interesting for those characters, and that's their response to their friend dying is to kind of basically again blow everything up and run off to London and for some excitement and meet women there. But again, in the light of day, I mean, that scene with Cassavetes and Mary, that's her character's name. After kind of the morning after, where they're having the coffee and it's raining outside. And he kind of it's kind of he realizes what he did. It's never gonna work, and he's got a little bit of regret there, and then she runs off and slips in the rain and everything. And
that scene is so hard. That scene is so because you feel so bad for her, because really it's he goes, all of them, they all go too far, and I think he realizes it, and he doesn't do it gently. It's being only in touch with anger. So he insults her, he humiliates her, and of course she's going to storm off.
Right.
But that's ultimately what that was his way to get out of it. He's not gentle. None of them. They're not gentle men. She, on the Criterion, she's interviewed, and the scene right before that, where and again, it's another scene where you're like, what are you doing? Like he's wrestling with her, and she's telling, and so she says that she felt that was like as if he was like raping her. And I thought, did you take it that way?
I didn't take it that way. I took it as his character just being so out of. He's been married for so long. He just doesn't know how to kind of react around another single woman. And so I took it more as
they turn into kids. I mean,
he regresses back, and he's awkward about how to. Okay, what do I do with a woman I've been married for? They never say how long, but you assume quite a while. He's got kids and everything like that. So I took it as more he's been out of the game for so long that he does all of them. They don't know really. Same with Peter Falk, and to some extent Ben Gazzarra, although Ben's character kind of
his problems are the worst.
He's really looking for a way out, and escape, and excuse, and he's obviously I don't want to spoil any of it at the end, but his character, the route his take. But Peter and John's characters just to me were like they're so awkward at trying to be single and impressing women and trying to get them interested in them because they've been out of it for so long.
Well, it's it's so cringeworthy, and every when I think back of it's been a while since I've partied or gone or gone to bars or clubs, like when I was in early to mid 20s, but you always see and I'm sure I've done it myself. You always see someone coming onto a woman and she's clearly not interested, and it's so embarrassing because they don't read the other person's clearly not.
Yeah.
And you see
that's how I took those.
And you see that with Peter Falk when he goes up to those women and he says, he's like smiles like, well, I'm looking for a woman, and like you see that they're, I think one of them says she's going to call security.
Yeah.
And it's so embarrassing. I mean, Cassavetes, I think, gets to the blonde, the woman, Jenny Ronacher, much more. Because he's charming, but he's also so strange, like he's saying weird shit. That
scene where he is ordering, they're at the casino and he's ordering the drinks for the two of them, and he says, "I can drink you under the table." That scene there, I really enjoyed, because from what I've read of the same books that you have about Cassavetes, that him kind of looking at her as he had a way of looking at other actors kind of through the top of his head, saying, "I can drink you under the table." That little confrontation seemed to be very Cassavetes, not as an actor, but just as a person. And so I in writing Independent, that was one of the scenes that that I know that I told the actor to kind of watch, to kind of get that's really kind of, to me, Cassavetes.
Oh, for sure. I think a lot of all of their personalities are really in this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because they, I'm sure you saw the BBC, the documentary at the time, which is people could find on YouTube. It's also on the Criterion disc. But these guys spend a lot of time together and changing scripts and asking themselves what they would do. So and certainly just from reading a lot about Cassavetes, talking to people, you've talked to people who've worked with him, and so have I. And certainly when you see him in Husbands, I think it's a lot of himself is in this guy Gus.
Yeah.
But and just that, John even said about this movie is that this is their night out. Like that 5 days, this is these guys, and there's plenty of boy, left in them. And I think they totally regress because it's a midlife crisis. They're afraid of what's next. They're afraid to go home. They're afraid to go to work. And they don't know how to express it other than to try to look for excitement and escape. Again, it's like an addiction, right? It's like, something's wrong and someone takes a drink, or they go and do some drugs or whatever. Their way is, well, let's go to London, let's do this. And ultimately, it's like, well, let's go home.
This didn't work out. Let's go home. And to me, I think in Husbands, the ending of Husbands, when Cassavetes' character, that to me is such a perfect moment, such a perfect ending. Yeah, I love that I've ever seen in a film. I mean, it's I don't want to, for anybody who hasn't seen it, you and I have seen it, but the ending of Husbands. Yeah,
we don't worry about spoilers here. It's a 51-year-old movie.
Yeah, that's true too. But in watching the whole, thing, the first time I saw it, and then get to that ending, I was like, oh, that is so perfect. That is just, I've never seen such a perfect ending to a film.
Well, I love what he said about, because people, he was saying, oh, it's an optimistic, and people were like, well, where's the optimism? Like he cheats on his wife and he goes home and that's it. Like obviously he's on, and then he's like, no, but the reason, he goes, didn't you hear what Nick Cassavetes, his son, is, as is in it. He's like, oh, Dad, Mom's mad, you're in trouble. And he goes, look, that means that he's important. If he wasn't important, then if she didn't care, then that would be negative. But if he's in trouble, then he's obviously important in their lives. And I thought only John would look at it that way. But if you notice, John, as he turns in, he starts to laugh. It's like you can barely tell, but as he turns, he's smiling. I don't know if you ever picked up on that. If you just watch the last shot,
to look again. Yeah.
But
he does. Okay, I'll have to.
Sorry, what were you going to say? You had a thought there.
Well, just that you're right. That's Nick and also his daughter Alexandra. who plays the real little girl who that moment when they have the bag, Peter's going to his house and he looks up the drive and he sees his daughter walking down and she just comes over and starts, crying about whatever. It's such a great little moment. And when he goes inside, he's going to get yelled at or whatever.
Yeah.
He's going to get what's coming to him.
Yeah, both of them,
and, exactly.
And it's, they leave Gazzarra there, he doesn't want to go. And so he stays and they ask each other, what's he going to do without us? It's left unresolved, right? It's not, again, just like life, things are not always resolved.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say,
what,
you're right, just like,
what is going to come to that guy? Because he had major, we see him earlier and that's a hard scene to watch. He hits his wife, he hits his mother-in-law, and then as soon as he leaves, pulls a knife on him. Yeah, like it's a tough scene to watch. And as soon as he leaves, he makes what he does with showing the insecurities. They're always checking about their own personality, and right away, I'm a funny guy. Right? It's like that's what he's concerned about. At that moment, he's more concerned with whether he's funny, and you even see John Marley say that to Jenna Rollins. Another thing I never picked up on. He's like, well, maybe I'm insecure. He's like, well, not that that's my problem. Like they don't want to let go of that idea that they carry of themselves, that other people know about them. They don't want to go outside of that.
No.
So in the case of these guys, just going back to the drinking scene, I mean, I really took that scene where they're really humiliating that poor woman in the red hat. I just thought because they didn't feel she had feeling in her songs, that because they are all about trying to feel and experience the death of the friend and grieve, and so it's almost they're projecting it on her. That's how I saw it.
Exactly.
I don't know if
I can see that in saying that, or hearing you explain it that way. I can definitely see that, and because they're not getting, and it may have been a case of them not getting what they wanted out of the actress. But in the context of the scene, it's she's not really. They feel there's more that she can be giving at that moment. And I know that Cassavetes, like you talked about, after he got you're going to have final say. At that first screening, he went back and edited it a couple different ways, in different angles, and they speculated he just didn't want. He had so much fun on this, he didn't want it to end. And he knew if he edited it, turned it in, that's the end of it. Yeah. Wasn't ready to give that up.
Right. And there's a 4-hour version. Gazzarra said, there's an interview with Gazzarra even on here where he said he still thought of course you couldn't release that, but
right.
He thought the 4-hour one was the best. And I read his memoir, Ben Gazzarra, which is great. And he really had it out with John about, because then he started that he was cutting a lot of stuff that Ben thought was his best work ever. And they got into a huge fight about it. But that's all in Ben Gazzarra's book. They kind of touch on it in that infamous Dick Cavett interview, when they all go on go on in character and drunk and embarrass themselves. And Gazzarra, he mentions it. But it's a tough film to see, but it's great.
If people will stay with it, I mean, you're going to see something interesting and special. And and actually, mentioned in the Ray Carney book that Cassavetes was toying with the idea of a sequel called 3 Days in Rochester.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah,
following the Ben Gazzarra character, I guess, coming back and having to go to Rochester or something.
Oh,
like that. So I think that would have been interesting. Yeah. But and then kind of with Cassavetes and Ben Gazzarra, when they did The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, right before they had to shoot the scene where they were going to shoot, the bookie, John was like, "Do we have to kill him?" And Gazzarra was like, John, the movie's called The Killing of a Chinese Monkey. Yes, we have to shoot this.
Yeah.
But he just didn't like violence that kind of violence, and was looking for a way out, and so that kind of artistic differences, I think, existed, or at least that kind of collaboration between John and Ben Gazzarra. They had enough respect for each other to kind of get in those type of disagreements artistically, and not take obviously anything personally, but all for the better of the work. So you can't fault either of them. But Husband's another great one, and it interesting too that John's first 3 films, Shadows, is all one word: Shadows, Faces, Husbands.
Right.
And then he gets into more into deeper into the 70s. But those first 3, Shadows, Faces, Husbands, just
minus
one
the
word.
Studio. Minus the studio.
Yeah,
films.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Minus the studio films. Yeah. Just his by himself. But Faces and Husbands are almost kind of flip sides of the same coin, if you will, in some regards.
Yeah, I think it was really an extension. Actually, the comment in the box, question from Paul Zenev, he asks that, are Faces and Husbands companion pieces? Yeah, we were touching on that off and on. I mean, I certainly think so. I certainly think in terms of the temperament of the people and their problems and their standing in life, I think he really was. It was like the next chapter. I mean, we see them more at home in Faces, and then this is them out where something else, another problem comes up.
Yeah, where in Faces it's a little bit more divorce talking about and examining that to a degree, and then Husbands is death of somebody. When you're still young, and 40 is not too terribly old, and somebody dies at 40, that's like, where they're not direct sequels or anything like that. There's none of the same characters, but they do, like you said, explore those same areas, and it's very interesting to see both of them back to back.
And I think I think Husbands also has a lot more humor. I mean, and it's so organic. I mean, I also love in the when they're throwing up in and Falk and Cassavetes are in the stall and they lock the door, and how much it bothers Gazzarra that he's not in on it. He's knocking.
And then he comes in and sits and they leave. Yeah, right.
Every time I turn my back, you guys are giggling and then even on the train, they're loud. It's like they're kids, it's hard to believe that one's a dentist, one's an architect, but it's an extraordinary film. For me, the box set, I mean, I've had this since 15 years. Right. It's just, it's anyone who's a director or a screenwriter or an actor or a DOP. I mean, it's a film school within itself. There's a lot to learn from what went into his films and how he got them made and how they were perceived and the receptions and so on and so forth. So it's a great study,
And there's a lot of great interview clips on YouTube as well. Yeah. There's like he did one that's about 8 minutes long, promoting opening night on some news channel, and he starts off, talking about great it is, and then he goes off on this tangent about Hollywood, which is just fantastic. Yeah.
Someone only recently put the whole 40 minutes on there. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, really?
Because for years it was like a 5-minute clip, but someone, I don't know where they found it, but it's like a half an hour or so.
Oh, really? Okay.
You'll find it if you type in Cassavetes on YouTube. It's on there. But that's a great interview. You can find John on Sketchworks Comedy, which again is on MoPi TV, and I'll leave the link in the description box for John's comedy show there.
We do a weekly news parody called Sketchworks News Break that MoPi runs, and then it's also on YouTube, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and all that. Well, we don't air it on Twitter. We do the link to the YouTube, but Instagram and Facebook. It's on there, and it's every Tuesday. In fact, one will be coming out later today. Cool. But it's which we started a little before quarantine, just as something to do and actually promote our live shows. And then quarantine happened, and we just started continuing with it every Tuesday. We got over 60, almost 70, weekly news parody episodes, and
that's great.
Yeah. It's getting some attention. So
that's awesome. All right. Well, again, the link is in the description box below to where you can find John's YouTube channel. And thank you so much for those of you who tuned in and asked questions and left comments. Really appreciate it. And again, if you haven't seen Faces or Husbands, go check it out. And even if you haven't, see it again, because it's different every time you see it.
You'll definitely take something away. Every time you see it, you view it, and I like that about film. Some films you watch over, and, it's just kind of entertainment for entertainment's sake. But to go back to films that have something and to take something away, every time it's really kind of special.
Yeah, no, that's certainly my favorite kinds as well. All right, John. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see everyone soon.
I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/rubberbellissimo@the-movies for full details. Patreon is exclusive content that you will receive month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details and join today. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on the link, and from there, you can leave a donation if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo, which you will see floating above my head in the top left corner of your screen. So just click on that, and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release a new video. And lastly, liking the videos, sharing, and commenting all really help to create traction over to my YouTube channel. So please like, please share, please comment, and we can engage together further on my YouTube channel about my various videos and episodes. Thank you so much again, everyone, and I will see you all soon.